There are three main transformations that we will be using here with our functions. We have shifts, reflections, and stretches. Shifts are also called translations. We normally shift vertically or horizontally, and Q is associated with the vertical shifts, whereas P is associated with the horizontal shift. Then the negative that we normally see working in our functions talks about the reflections, and we are reflecting either in the x-axis or in the y-axis. And then for the stretches, the A in our formulas explains the stretches. We have a stretch vertically, and also we have a stretch horizontally. Let's see how those are included in this question. In question 1, we are given that f of x is equal to 3 over x plus 2. Then there is another function g, which is a new function, and this function is formed by transforming the function of f. You will notice it says determine the equation of g if g of x is equal to f of x plus 1. So g of x is obtained from f, which means f is transformed. Now clearly, to get g in this case, we just need to add 1 to f of x. You can go back then and just do that. So g of x will be equal to 3 over x plus 2. See, this is our function f of x, but it says add 1 to it, and you end up with 3 over x plus 3. So this is the new function g of x. But the question is, how do you get the equation of g of x? You will notice in this case, it looks like f of x must be shifted 1 unit vertically in order to give you g of x. So if you were to describe g of x in words, you would say g of x is a vertical shift of f of x by 1 unit, and that would be enough. What about number 2? Remember that f of x is given as 3 over x plus 2. Now, a new function g of x is formed. And we are told here that the new function g of x is equal to f of x plus 2. You can look at what is happening in here and explain the transformation straight away. You will notice that the initial x is now replaced with x plus 2. And we said when we're dealing with horizontal shifts that when you see a plus 2, when you see a plus, it means that is a shift horizontally to the left. Now that 2 is connected to x, so it affects the value of x because we are adding the 2 directly to x. So it is the value of x that is affected, which tells you that you are shifting horizontally, because shifting horizontally will affect the values of x. And so clearly, what we shall do then, in order to get the function g, is to just replace wherever there is x in the original function. We just replace that with x plus 2. So the new equation becomes 3 divided by, this time it can't just be x, now it's x plus 2, because x has been replaced with x plus 2. that x there is replaced by x plus 2. The plus 2 will remain there. So this is the new equation. And if you were to describe this transformation, if you were to describe the transformation that happened to f in order to give you g, you will notice, because that is x plus 2, it tells you that the function f was shifted 2 units horizontally to the left. When you get a negative in front of f of x, remember f of x means y. You can write y is equal to f of x. So if there is a minus in front of f of x, it actually means there is a minus in front of y. And that minus is affecting the values of y. So the values of y are changing. Then if you remember that a minus talks about a reflection, you can tell which axis would affect the y values if you were to reflect along that axis. The values of y will change sign if you reflect them along the x-axis. So it makes sense then that to get g of x here, we just need to reflect the graph of f along the x-axis. Well, in this question, we are looking for the equation, and all we need to do is put the minus in front of f of x. Remember, f of x was 3 over x plus 2. So that is the equation. You can just simplify that to get minus 3 over x minus 2. So this is the equation of the new graph g of x. But if you are asked to describe the transformation that happened there, remember you will say the function f is reflected along the x-axis to get gx. Now, number 4, you will notice the minus is now connected to the x. It is directly connected to the x, which means the values that are changing here are now the values of x. So when it looks like this means we are reflecting along the y-axis. That is the description you would give to this transformation. G of x is obtained by reflecting the graph of f along the y-axis. That is why the values of x are changing to a minus. So what it then means is, remember, f of x is equal to 3 over x plus 2. What it means is, instead of x, we now replace x with a minus x. Wherever there is x, we now put a negative x in order for us to get g. Therefore, g of x will be equal to 3 divided by negative x plus 2. For number 5, again, gx is obtained from the graph of f. We need to get it from the graph of f. And to answer this question, you would just take 4 and multiply that by f of x. Remember, f of x is 3 over x plus 2. If you simplify this, you'll get 12 over x plus 8. So this is the equation they are asking for, but I need you to understand what is happening here. That 4 is like the value of a, and remember we said y is equal to f of x, but you do sometimes get a case where f of x is then multiplied by a. That represents a stretch. In particular, this is a vertical stretch with a stretch factor of 4. So to describe that transformation fully, you need to state that it's a vertical stretch of factor 4. It's important. So if A is in front of f of x like that, then you just take that value of A as the stretch factor. It doesn't matter whether there is a minus or a plus. You just need to use the absolute value of A, just the A. So you can just ignore the negative that is even there and look at the A itself. That will give you the stretch factor. But in the next question, the 4 is not in front of y. The 4 is now in front of x. This is also a stretch, but this one is called a horizontal stretch because it is affecting the values of x there. So this is a horizontal stretch. The factor, because every stretch must have a factor, the factor is not equal to 4, but it is equal to 1 over 4. That is just one thing you need to be careful about. If it is affecting x, then the factor cannot just be the number that is in front of x. It will be 1 divided by the number that is in front of x. So this is a horizontal stretch of f along the horizontal axis using a factor of 1/4. And so to get g of x in this case, all we need to do is wherever there is x, we will put 4x. Because now this is f of 4x. Maybe just remember that f of x is equal to 3 over x plus 2. But now to get g of x, wherever there is x, we need to put 4x. So now this becomes 3 divided by 4x, all that plus 2. And that will be our answer there.